The best thing about my job is helping those individuals who need it the most. It's been well publicized in the news recently that the first two graduates of the female graduates of the Army Ranger School recently completed the course. Their names and faces were splashed across every major newspaper and magazine in the country. Well, 5 years ago, there was a young woman who no one knew, and to this day probably never will, who was in active combat in Afghanistan, fighting alongside Marine Corps Special Forces in countless firefights. She developed some severe injuries that have addled her for a number of years, and finally she was referred into the disability evaluation system. Over 10,000 female Marines have made deployments to Afghanistan or Iraq since the beginning of OEF and OIF in 2001. 15 of them have won valorous medals. This client of mine was one of those women. She is a pioneer just like the Tuskegee Airmen from World War II, and yet no one's ever going to know her name or know her face. And I had the opportunity to represent her, and that wasn't a job, that was a privilege. I am a formal disability evaluation system attorney here at the Washington Navy Yard. I represent sailors and Marines going through the disability evaluation system who become injured, ill, or wounded in the course of their military service. Generally speaking, when service members become so ill or injured, they are frequently referred into the disability evaluation system. This system is set up to determine whether or not their condition makes them unfit for continued military service, and if it does, what degree of disability they should be entitled to through the Department of the Navy. Sometimes these service members are trying to have additional conditions found unfitting, increase their disability percentage, or sometimes even stay on active duty in spite of a disability finding. Throughout this process, they're afforded several opportunities to make their argument, and the final stage of that is the formal physical evaluation board stage. This is where we come into play. The formal physical evaluation board attorneys represent these individuals in making their argument about why they should or shouldn't be found unfit, or if they are found unfit, why their condition is more severe than initially assessed. And as I said a moment ago, sometimes they want to stay on active duty, and so to make the best argument about why they can still do their job. This job is extremely rewarding. We have the opportunity to work with some of the most ill and injured service members in the Navy and Marine Corps. Some of them are combat veterans, some of them are victims of assault or sexual assault. Some of them are simply individuals who developed terrible conditions or injuries during the course of their service. When dealing with a lot of these individuals, you have to be mindful not just of their service and their medical problems, but their temperament. This is their future and their career they're talking about. In many cases, this is a job that is more than a job, it is a lifestyle. It's all they've known for the last 10, maybe even 20 years. It's very important to them. And so it's not just about making an argument in a blank space, it's about taking care of the individual who has that medical problem that has essentially thrown their entire life off the rails. The service members in the disability evaluation system who become ill or injured cannot advocate for themselves. Almost anyone who's ever watched television has flipped on an episode of Law & Order or CSI and seen what a courtroom drama looks like with a criminal proceeding. Very few people ever look at these proceedings and have any idea what goes into them. Out of the entire Navy and Marine Corps, only about 9,000 sailors and Marines were referred into the disability evaluation system last year, and only about 1,300 of those went to the formal boards. So we are their last best opportunity to state their case about why they should be found unfit or fit to continue on in the Navy or Marine Corps. We are also their last best opportunity to get them the benefits that they deserve if they are ill or injured. And in many cases, these are service members that have lost the capacity to advocate for themselves. They are so addled, either physically or mentally, by whatever ails them, they just simply can't make their own argument. And this is where having an advocate, a lawyer like us, the formal physical evaluation board attorneys, can be critical to their process, to be critical to getting them the representation they deserve, and can be critical in ensuring that they get the medical care down the road that they're going to need to treat this injury or illness that they've incurred during their service. Everyone's heard of the VA. Very few people have heard of us. They know that there's something out there sort of in the wind that's this medical system they can get put into if they get hurt or develop an impairment. So the first question to ask is to talk to their doctors. Say, hey, this condition makes me unable to do my job. You've been treating me for a while and I'm simply not getting any better. What can I do from here? Because I don't know that I'm ever going to be able to go back and do my rating or my MOS. The second thing is then to consult with a physical evaluation board attorney. Most of the major medical facilities in the Department of the Navy have an informal physical evaluation board attorney stationed there, and they are welcome to consult with them at any point once they're referred into the medical evaluation board pipeline. And then if they get past that stage, well, that's where we come into play. And we take their case to the formal physical evaluation board. We submit documents on their behalf. We make an oral argument with them present in front of 3 officers, senior officers from the Navy and Marine Corps, one of whom is a doctor, 2 of whom are line officers. And they will make the final decision about whether or not this service member is in fact unfit for their condition or should stay on active duty. They'll also, if they are found unfit, be referred into the VA system simultaneously to get an evaluation about the scope of their impairment. What's critical here is that they're working hand in hand with their doctors and with their physical evaluation board attorneys to present the best argument possible about why they should stay in or get out of the military because of this medical problem. And the service member has to understand that we are here to help them, but often it requires them to take that first step to push things along. So simply ask a question about what can be done if your medical problem simply has been unresolved.